Somerset Chamber, and I'm delighted to be hosting the series of Hustings events which the Chamber is staging around the county this month in anticipation of the general election 2015. Tonight we're in Taunton Deane. We have all of the 6 candidates with us, and we have an audience of 50 business people ready to ask questions and engage in some lively debate. Some of the questions have been preset. Kind folk have emailed me some questions. We're going to take plenty of interaction from the floor, plenty of comments, and we're going to tease out the real local issues which are important to Somerset businesses. It's going to be entertaining, it's going to be exciting, and it's going to be a great night.
I care passionately about the area, which is why I'm standing. I do firmly believe that Taunton Deane has not had the representation or the funding that it deserves for many years, and that's another reason why I'm trying to champion the area. And so I've thrown myself into this role for almost 2 years now, actually, since my selection at an Open Primary. And that really has involved going out and about, but particularly meeting as many businesses in the area as possible.
The Green Party is the only party which is really serious about the environmental problems that we face, principally climate change.
Why am I doing this? Well, because I think we need an MP free of party tie. We need an MP who is free to speak and free to act on behalf of the people of Taunton Deane. Too often we get our MPs of all shades just doing whatever their parties tell them to. The phone rings, they get their lines to take. I dare say there may be some on this table tonight, telling them what they need to say on any particular issue.
We believe in improving education, supply side reforms, so looking at guaranteed apprenticeship for young people leaving school. We believe in improving infrastructure. We also believe we're going to put in a UK investment bank. We already have some good investment banks like the Green Investment Bank, which is doing good work, and I've done some work with them.
Probably most importantly to me, the rights to be an individual within the society and to be respected for being an individual and being encouraged to be an individual and take the decisions that you want to take. And I think that's a message that sits particularly well within the business community, because it's the business community, it's the commercial community, it's the entrepreneurs who have the imagination, have the drive, are prepared to take the risks, and we need to encourage more of that in Taunton Deane.
The reason that I came to UKIP was a sense of disaffection with the mainstream established parties and a constant dichotomy between the nasty Tories who want us to be fiscally conservative and living within our means, but sometimes enacting policies that seem to hurt the most vulnerable in society, and then conversely you have Labour who are more than happy to borrow to spend on social care. My feeling is, why can't we find a middle way where we're living within our means but we're also looking after the most vulnerable in society?
And the question that was posed to me is, I have no super fast broadband, someone will be last, and it looks like it's going to be me. But accepting that someone has to be last, what urgency can you bring to the remaining poor souls with a poor service?
How would you get more urgency into asking a specific question? Well, you know, the platform of being an MP does allow you to ask those questions about what is happening with the broadband rollout. The broad feeling is that it is going ahead in Somerset, and we will achieve what, you know, I believe it's 97% by the end of next year, I think it is. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. But it has been the actual rollout. There is an issue around how the market has worked, though, in the BT rollout, given that BT effectively were the only supplier that could really do it. They still, as the former state monopoly, own the underlying network, and that has been an insurmountable problem probably every single time this has come up.
I went for a meeting in Yeovil with Nick Clegg and David Laws and the local members, Nick Garcia, and people from the LEP. And they were saying that they thought that the £15 million that they just announced that was going to be plugged into making the broadband happen quicker was a very, very good thing, because the LEP was very effective. This is what the LEP was saying. I mean, you might say they would say that, wouldn't they? But the setting up of the LEP was something that was seen as good, because it was local decisions that needed to be made and local needs that were now being represented to government rather than the other way around.
So Devon and Somerset got the largest tranche of money in the country for rolling out superfast fast broadband, and so that's for the 90% of people, and that will happen. Then we had another tranche of money to roll it on up to 95%, but as you say, it's not great if you come in the 5% that aren't going to get it. Well, so already what I've done, and that's what I see as the MP's role, is I have been out meeting many of these people, so particularly working with people in the Blackdown Hills, so Churchingford, Otterford, Smeeth-Harp, all of that area, Wellington, Greenham, there are patches all over the place, plus indeed in the centre of Taunton, the Crescent. And so we got together a petition, which I did put to Sajid Javid. It comes under his remit, the Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, so strangely broadband comes under that remit. So he's got a rather wide remit, you might say perhaps too wide. So, so we're getting on their radar.
It's led to the situation where, as I touched on in my introduction, there is now no differentiation between homes and businesses. I mean, that's all very well for people being able to watch things on iPlayer, but it's far more important, in my view, that we get Taunton, for example, sorted out with superfast broadband in the business district. But the problem is, when it comes to ticking the boxes on the target sheet in the Connecting Devon and Somerset programme, there is no difference between residential premises and business premises. And it's easier and quicker to connect the residential premises. That's fundamentally wrong. We've got to protect the businesses. We've got to provide them with the services. They're the creators of wealth. They provide the tax. They provide the business rates, although, as we've heard, maybe that'll be taxed in a different way in the future. They provide the national insurance that pays for all the things that we want to see provided for. So I think that's been particularly disappointing.
The question is, I can train my new employees and my current team, but need new recruits with a positive attitude and approach and who want to work. Careers advice is poor or non-existent and lacks understanding. What revolution will you start to help the schools and their relationships with an understanding of business?
We need the whole link, the whole backup between schools, the business, and I think the government, in fairness, are rolling out some excellent apprenticeship schemes and help to get these young people off the ground. They're giving £1,500 if you take on a new apprentice. You know all this. But we need to work much more closely together. And I, for one, will be really, really going for that, because I think it's terribly important that we skill our young people up.
Education is about fitting people for life, not about fitting people just for a job. Now, obviously, having a job and having the skills to get a job is a very key part of one's life. But this reductionism, which seems to imagine that education is just there to produce people who work for you and fit into your practices, seems to me to be very depressing. And of course, the real issue here, as with most things, is how much you're prepared to spend on it. Everybody else will promise you that you can have a wonderful education system and your taxes will go down. Well, I may not be very well educated, but my economics might be a little bit ropey, but it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. No, if you vote for me, your taxes will go up, but your education will improve.
I'm very concerned about education. I talked earlier about the £25 million black hole that we have in primary education. I think we need to take the whole thing back to the beginning, rather than necessarily wondering about how we get business more involved in the education of children at the secondary stage. I'll give you a quick example. My middle daughter, her class has fluctuated anything between 34 and 39 children at primary school. You can't teach 39 6-year-olds. It's absolutely insane. And until we actually have a properly funded system of education in this area, then we're not going to get over that problem.
I mean, the Labour Party is very committed to improving education, to having an education system that works for business. So we are looking at a guaranteed apprenticeship for all people that leave school with the right qualifications. So, I mean, that is something, I think would go quite a long way to dealing with it. I think we have a real problem in Taunton Deane at retaining talent. I think that's one of the things I've noticed as being a parliamentary candidate over the last year, is that if you go around our sixth form colleges, you'll not. So I went to Richard Hewish, the Politics Society there, and not one of the students there was actually going to stay in Taunton. And I think about myself and my peer group in Taunton. Well, there's only a handful of us left, really. Nearly everybody else is up in London. So a big part of trying to have a dynamic economy where you have the talented young people around who can bring your businesses forward, bring the economy up, is making sure that they actually stay in Somerset.
My business has improved in turnover and trade terms year on year over several years, but cash flow remains crucial. I have no profit until I am paid. What will you do to help the merry-go-round and try to get customers to pay me on time?
my business suffers from time to time. And there have been various efforts over the years, I think, particularly with government, to try and get government departments in particular to pay on time. And those have had, I think, probably mixed success. So I think probably as an MP, the first thing that I would do would be to make sure that the government, the government, I was going to say of which I'm part, but that's probably a little bit over-egging things. But I'd be an MP and we'd have an opportunity to make sure that the government actually did pay people on time. I think that's probably the first and most important thing that we as MPs could do.
Yeah, I can only echo what Mike's just said, really.
I'll try and do something which seems to fail miserably every time anyone tries this on television, but I'm going to ask for a one-word answer, which is yes or no, and that's business rates. So the simple question is, business rates is the most loathed and unfair tax around. Will you overhaul the system?
Yes.
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 Yes, absolutely yes.
Wow! So it's a two-part question, but it has the same impact. One is you have the misfortune of being stuck in a lift with me between floors. I am your audience. Tell me specifically what you will do for Taunton Dean, which makes you different. You've only 1 minute, and then we'll be moving up in this elevator. The other part of that question from someone here tonight, and I thank Dave for this. Dave, forgive me, I'll read it out for you. Given the stellar performance of Bridgewater in the last 10 years and the stagnation of Taunton, what policies do you have to reverse that trend?
We need to move towards a more sustainable economy. That means much less carbon. That means much more focus on public transport. That means doing something about the bonkers car parking charging system they have in Taunton Dean, where 7 hours cost you £7, but 10 hours cost you £7.60, which encourages people to commute into town and stay there all day.
What we have to absolutely do is get Taunton Dean on the national agenda, and I raised it at the Conservative Party conference. I don't think anybody has ever stood up and mentioned the name Taunton Dean at the Conservative Party conference before, and it was televised. So we're on the agenda. We've got to get the infrastructure sorted out, the roads, the railways. I've been working towards that, but we need to do more. We need to sort the connectivity out. But what I'd really like to do is get a branding for Taunton Dean. We need something to identify ourselves, and whether it's apples and cider, or whether it's cricket, whether it's a combination, we need to get that branding out there, and that's working with all you people, Taunton Chamber, Somerset Chamber, Taunton Forward, all the councils. We can do it. We have massive opportunity, and we need also to get more facilities. As Clive said, we're going to get this water sports centre on the river. We're going to open up the river to be this beautiful centre, and I personally have an environmental and green background, and we need to infiltrate that in as well.
What I'm going to do for Taunton Dean is give the constituency a say about the big elephant in the room, which is our membership of the EU. It's also a pretty key policy to reverse the trend of stagnation. It's a question and an issue that none of the rest of the parties really want to touch. I don't think even our independent candidate really wants to go there. He has spoken of lancing the boil. This issue has been sticking around for the last 40 years, and I think it's a key reason why the nation is coming out in purple spots. So a chance to have a say, and at least a chance to get a referendum, even if you're not sure whether you absolutely want out or not. I think this is the biggest question in British politics today, and when you're looking to be electing somebody to national parliament, which is where we have to make this decision, if you want to have that say, it better be a UKIP vote. Thanks.
I think what I can bring to Taunton is a bold, fresh approach, but based on my business and professional background. I'm very good at working with people. I talked earlier about having a lateral brain rather than a tunnel vision, and I think it's time that we thought more laterally about Taunton Dean. It's about looking out, not in. It's about recognising that we are part of a bigger, wider world, and we need to step up to that challenge. And it's about doing all that with you, the local commercial community, with the local authorities, but it's also doing it and keeping those liberal values really close to our hearts: fairness, tolerance, the rights of the individual, and respect for the individual. And how would I do it? I'd do it by winning this election on May the 7th, by retaking control of Taunton Dean Borough Council, and throwing the rotten Tories out of Somerset County Council.
I suppose the first thing I'd be doing differently is being a Labour MP in Taunton. We haven't had one of those in quite some time. I believe that is correct, actually.
Some people still remember him and talk about him.
Yeah. And I think that what will be different is that, as is going to be a Labour government on May the 8th, and Ed Miliband is going to be our Prime Minister, I think I'll be very well placed as your Labour MP to speak directly to government, as Rebecca has already said about how she would speak to a Conservative government. I would be able to speak to the actual Labour government and make our case in Taunton Deane. I think the point was well made by Rebecca about Bridgewater, though. If you make the particular point there, I think I prefer to make the comparison with Exeter, actually, and I think that's more what we should be aspiring to. Bridgewater, I think, is done, almost overdeveloped by getting all these distribution centres, which are low wage, insecure employment, something I've already talked about, unsustainable as well. I mean, there are some good things in Bridgewater. They've got the Bridgewater College, I've already talked about that, the EDF Centre, and that's all great. However, I think Exeter is where we should be looking at, which I would also point out, got a Labour MP and a Labour Council, but they've done good stuff with the university and working in synergy with the private sector, with the Met Office, and that's the sort of things we should be doing to retain talent in the city.
Well, as a co-founder of Taunton Forward, it won't come as a surprise for me to say that I'm fully behind the Taunton Forward agenda of turning Taunton into the prime commercial, cultural, recreational centre in the southwest. And we're going to do that. We need to do that by driving the redevelopment of sites like Firepool, which have lain empty for far too long. We need to sort out Junction 25. I'm pleased to hear that we have at least indications that may now finally happen, but we need to wait and see what eventually happens. We've seen, for example, the Stonehenge Tunnel and the dualling of the A303 announced 4 times before general elections, coincidentally, every time, and then dropped quietly just afterwards. So we need to make sure that we keep the pressure on to see that Junction 25 is given the work. It has the work done to it to give it the capacity for Taunton to expand.
Into a really great evening. I think some interesting debate. I think really well chaired by Graham Knight, kept the flow and everything going really well. I think the panel was very strong and acquitted themselves very well. So we look forward to the next one, and if they like this, they'll be really valuable to our members.